Hi guys. I read really quiet, but I think this will work. Okay. So I wrote this book about unicorns, and I'm going to read you guys a bunch of poems about unicorns right now. And thank you so much, Zach. You're amazing, and thank you for inviting me. Let's start. With which memories do you feel most often afraid? You and I didn't often feel afraid. This was a constant in the unnatural order of how things are placed. You and I would set a book down to know it wouldn't move until someone meant to read it, or dust beneath. The same with jars and windows and houses. These things did not move unless intentionally, and intention in regards to movement was a natural process of the imaginary. This pleased you and I best, the movement of dancing. Each foot would be set upon the floor in certain ways one did not know the answer to, and there would always be an organic response that one would attend. Sometimes small trees would grow from the wood floors. Also, this was ordinary, and you and I would not worry about the stains of water upon the carpets, because carpets could always be taken into the yard and thoroughly washed. You and I on the matter of forests. I don't know if I have to explain, but you and I is a character or the main thing of this, and it's you ampersand I, but said out loud. You and I on the matter of forests. The myth of walking was never put to any accuracy. As a genuine, when we would stray, we were always aware of a certain treading, a softening of occurring, but there are things when one walks that cannot be undone. As we believe this is the beginning of chivalry, the unicorn of gentlemen. How one might roam, how two might meander. You and I were not he, nor she, nor we, but something different, a singular of sincere. You and I would try not to lie about where things began or how they were invented, but the hardest part was figuring the simple logic of one or two. You and I would like to be one made of two, or two into something very large, but sometimes it's hard to be very constantly convinced. You and I could feel one body against another body, and something would always threaten to fracture. The Cassandra Project. It is sad, but we have discovered that we hate unicorns. Unicorns are small, magical creatures that tread lightly so as not to intrude upon even the ground, and we all think that is fine and dandy, but also we do not buy it. When we tread heavily, and there are footprints, and then we take out our measurement sticks and we measure these prints, be they in sand or snow, and what we do next is write them down. And the measurements are never unicorns. They are impressions of very big feet and very heavy boots, and trumping is all about everything good anyways, because how else are we to know that we are having an impact on one-dimensional vibrating strings, because the whole notion of one-dimensional vibrating strings is really fucking out there to us, even considering how we've been lying all along, and really do love the genuine of unicorns, which is the proper plural of a mostly singular specimen. You and I as a word of two ones. Riddle. A curious of gentleman and a genuine of unicorn meet in a wood. You and I couldn't stop laughing. You and I again. You and I would sit and laugh and laugh and laugh. You and I began in a forest, and you and I ended in a wood. We would like to separate ourselves for a moment and tell you a story. You and I began in a forest, or you and I ended in a wood. We would sit together and find the best of things and hold them closely. This holding and closely took an entire lifetime, so we conspired together to change a natural occurrence of ending and death. And being as how we started as two and not one, we took that second part of our lifetimes, and in our forest and in our wood, we held this very closely. Our act of living still, while also again didn't bother us, because in this part of the story, only we knew that there was an us to distinguish. You and I began to sink into the hole that sitting in the same chair would make. It was hard to leave what had been formed and what had been formed around. You and I in this forest, in this chair, in this place of what only you and I saw and could saw into smaller pieces, would take these pieces and try to piece them together. A curious of gentleman invites you and I from a clearing. You and I wondered what it would be like to put on a gentleman's suit and hold things once they had been taken. The joy of having something that could be held anew. You and I could not be sure what to do with the things of someone else, the things that were once held in a different other hands. Each thing had a hesitance of having what does not belong. You and I planned a parade for the worry of things taken, for how to hold and how to continue with holding. You and I would leave, and you and I would walk to where the holdings could be returned. You and I concedes. Entering a city became a humor of taking, or where to be placed. You and I couldn't help but continue. Entering a city was made of a measurement into how many things could be placed beneath the things that are left behind. How to carry and to carry over. Things should be brought, and the things that were not should be bought, and everything should fit until it spills over, and then a bargain should be made. There are rules for too much. There are rules for not enough. There are things to learn about how to enter a city and how to proceed. You and I stood closely. Entering a city became a bile. When you and I went to a place, it became a gathering. You and I had never been to a place before, and the things that had gathered were around us, and everything was made of words, and how to make more words, and how these words would grow into things that might become large. You and I made words to fit with the things, and to fit with how the things gather, and you and I learned something new, and you and I forgot everything else. There is nothing else, because there is gather, and you and I cried. You and I sat in the back. In the back there is stillness, and in the back there is how does this work? In a city, everything is how does this work, and how things work is made of matter, which is very important. All of our meadow had been planted into this yard, and we couldn't go near. Our meadow was planted and tended, and the things of matter would walk into it and dig their heels. This meadow is so lovely. This meadow makes me feel like I shouldn't wear shoes. Don't you love this meadow? And you and I would want to put their shoes back onto their feet and tell them to leave the meadow very alone. You and I as logic pronouns. Oh, I don't like this one. You and I began as a voice, and then you and I became a song. There is always a place in a room. This is the place of hiding, and this is the place where nothing can be found, even if someone is looking. This is the place where you and I planted a meadow and no one in the city could find it. You and I had become so sad that this was now the place of where the meadow grew. You and I wanted to invite someone into this meadow, into this place of where nothing could be found, but you and I would say all of the wrong words to the someones in the city. You and I knew things could be greater, but you and I had only started to know the loyalty of alone. You and I drew stories about the meadow lost. You and I worried that our bodies were growing differently. You and I clung to each other, and after the fire it became very important that we were two who were clinging. There was at least another when there was nothing else, and we remembered when we had fallen in love with something far away. We could play this on repeat because in a city there is always something new to buy, and we could walk to where we would buy them. We bought the same recordings and the same things to play them on, and we kept buying these things because we could not stand to see our empty hands. We could not stand to hold them. Once you and I met a girl and fell in love. This is what you and I did best, finding a girl in a meadow. You and I and the girl always would have the same name, and always would have the same name when we met, and we would look at each other through this name until the girl in the meadow would hear her name called clearly from another horizon. The girl would return to her cottage, and you and I would be left to puzzle this loudly. There had been suddenly something and now there wasn't, and this was very new because our forest was hard to find. Every time we would be tricked so synonymously. You and I and a beast. There is a softness of beasts when they are sleeping, and they are sleeping beside the body of a nearer you and I. The beasts of the forest were not an eating beast nor a chasing beast, but they would rumble below the canopy, and you and I learned to tend through what their largest feet would unearth. You and I found wit and wonder, and you and I objected to one within the other, but you and I had never been a species of fury. You and I would listen to how the sound of what a beast would sound would lumber out of its tongue, and then how this would turn to nag. The uncertainty of whether these beast things were a thing that maybe you and I could not endure because you and I were missing some beast pieces was wondered, but you and I had never had the proper bits to begin. You and I with the beast would forget we had just met, and when we learned the parts of becoming a part of the same thing, we would notice the drifting like snow. There was not often weather in the meadow, but you and I could tell a changing of seasons by the sound of how the boughs would fail. Winter was a tremble of luster, of nearly gotten. You and I would place names on the things that had fallen, and the names would sting when they would never be spoken aloud. Winter would keep the names frozen, and when it grew colic, winter would rid the limbs. Once it was said there is no domestic, but once from the beginning of us came with the wrist. Everything is so fucking guilt. I don't really know the name of how my hands weave. It became again strange, this awkward pause, how one thing could be drawn to another. There would be a sketch of embrace, and then would be the withdrawal. The things held in the most intentional of hands would be chewed, and then they would no longer exist. They would become the half things of hollow, the things of no longer glory. I had wanted to hold you and keep holding. I didn't care. And that's everything.